Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. The bigger picture, only on Money FM 89.3.
Welcome to the bigger picture, and it's the first day of a brand new month, also the first day of this week. And we have Matt Taylor on the line. He's a senior director from FTI Consulting. He's going to tell us what investors can look ahead to for the week. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good morning. Well, thanks.
Hope you had a good 3-day weekend. How was your Chinese New Year holiday?
It was very, very peaceful.
I'm glad to hear that. Let's crack on then, shall we? So markets in Asia could start the week lower after Wall Street fell on Friday following Trump's announced tariffs. Could you tell us a little bit more about what we can expect on that front?
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a pretty rough start to the trading week for markets in the Asia-Pacific region. Of course, we did have markets in the U.S. fall on Friday. They weren't down, I wouldn't say sharply, but in Asia we are seeing some significant declines for the markets that are already up and running. The Australian market is trading lower by about 1.8% or 154 points, but the Japanese market falling sharply. We're off by about 2.6% in early trade here, down by more than 1,000 points on the Nikkei 225. And this all following on from the declines that we saw on Wall Street on Friday after the president confirmed tariffs against some of America's biggest trading partners that would commence on Saturday. As you mentioned, the president will be leveling 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico alongside 10% on China. We saw the U.S. market on Friday really do a big about-face on the back of this news being confirmed. At the highs of the session, the Dow was up by more than 150 points, but ended the session down by more than 300 points and 0.75%. It was a volatile week for U.S. stocks as well. The U.S. markets ended the week mixed. We, of course, saw that big rout on Monday prompted by the news of China's AI developments through its DeepSeek application. But for the course of the week, the Nasdaq had a weekly loss of 1.6%. The S&P 500 was down by 1%. Dow Jones finished higher, up by about 0.3% respectively. So off to a fresh trading week, but looks like there's going to be a lot more volatility this week.
Yeah, it looks like Asian markets haven't gotten up on the right side of the bed, at least today. So let's dive into the nuts and bolts of the tariffs announced by the U.S. What can you tell us about those, as well as what some countries are saying they might do in terms of retaliation?
Right. Well, after much speculation, we did get this confirmation then on Friday out of the Trump administration that these tariffs would be leveled against places like Mexico, Canada, China. As I said, we saw that news hit the equity markets, but it did boost the US dollar, which is trading stronger. So the president imposing 25% tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada, 10% on China, but energy resources from Canada will have a lower tariff rate at about 10%. Now, together, the US does about $1.6 trillion in annual business with these three countries, and President Trump really using these tariffs as potential bargaining chips to get changes to policy that he wants. We know he has issues around the border, around immigration, around drug supply as well. So Canada retaliating, as you mentioned, imposing a 25% tariff on about $106 billion worth of U.S. goods. President Trump says the tariffs are purely economic, however, so we'll have to wait and see what he says, what the conditions are attached to potentially rolling back these tariffs, if there are any at all. But economists are worried that the tariffs could really reignite inflation at a time when it appears as though we are seeing inflation continuing to moderate globally. We're continuing to see prices fall after that big run-up post-COVID and the impact that we saw around the supply chain. We did get some inflation data out from the US on Friday. This is released by the Commerce Department, and it's the PCE index, which is the Fed's favored measure of inflation. We saw that coming in at 2.6% in December, and core inflation 2.8%. So ticking up slightly, but a lot of people are really going to be watching what impact these new round of tariffs will have on the inflation story, not only in the US, but then globally as well.
Yeah, it sounds like a full-blown trade war is well and truly on the cards in the horizon. Now, you talked about the PCE price deflator coming out at 2.6%. last Friday, and that's raised some concerns that inflation remains sticky. This week, investors can look ahead to some key jobs numbers that are coming out of the U.S., which I suppose would be a good indicator of the health of the U.S. economy. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, that will be the main piece of data that we're going to be watching out for globally this week, as it always happens at the end of the first week of every month. This is the non-farm payrolls data out of the United States coming out on Friday, and we are expecting to see a continued robust jobs market in the United States. Now, this will be important because we know that the Federal Reserve is cutting rates. Last week at its meeting, it paused this month. It did not cut interest rates despite the president calling for the independent Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. But it will give us a sense of the strength of the U.S. economy and just how aggressive the Federal Reserve can be when it looks to cut interest rates in the months ahead. Because if we continue to have a strong jobs market and a stronger economy, it's going to be harder for the Federal Reserve to be more aggressive and cut interest rates. So we are expecting about 175,000 jobs to be created over the month of January. The unemployment rate's going to remain steady around about that 4%, 4.1% level. So more indications that the U.S. economy is strong and that the Fed probably has some challenges ahead in terms of its ability to cut interest rates as aggressively as it started out going forward.
All right. The Fed has its work cut out, and I guess the global economy has its work cut out, given Donald Trump's tariffs that have been imposed on China, Mexico, and Canada. Matt, it's been a pleasure having you on the show as usual. I hope you have a fantastic remainder of the week.
Great. Thanks very much.
All right. Cheers, Matt. That was Matt Taylor, Senior Director, FTI Consulting. Stay with Money FM 89.3.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.